All right, guys. So this is another recording of Let's Read Philosophy, Literature, and Psychotherapy. Today we're doing excerpts from the Odyssey, and in the absence of Sam, who's a big fan, we've got Judith. The erudite Judith is going to tell us a little bit about Athena and Telemachus at the moment, by the looks of it. Shall we jump straight in then?
Yep, Courtney, thank you. Let's jump straight in. So, the thing about the Odyssey is, in contrast to the Iliad, a lot of it's kind of told in flashback, and that leads to kind of interesting jumps, I guess, in narrative. Um, and one of the ways in which Homer in the Odyssey kind of does this is by making Odysseus's son kind of front and center. This son who's kind of grown up without his father because Odysseus has been away at the Trojan War for the best part, well, for 20 years, essentially. So that's literally all of Telemachus's lifetime. And he doesn't know the man who's his father, this legendary warrior, Odysseus. And so this is the point at which Athena, who's been a bit of a patroness of Odysseus, a bit of a, she's the goddess who's kind of looked out for him, kind of intervenes, I suppose, as the gods are wont to do. And so she disguises herself. She comes down from Mount Olympus and she goes to Ithaca, which is the place, the kingdom in ancient Greece, which is Odysseus's kingdom. Sidebar, there's a lot of debate about where actually Ithaca was or is. I think there's two main candidates, and honestly, I haven't kind of kept up with the debate, so I don't really know quite which two locations are preferred at the moment. But I think the fact that it's not one of the identifiable places like Mycenae, um, where Agamemnon's kingdom was, or like Troy in the Iliad. So the fact that there's still this mystery about which was Odysseus' kingdom kind of lends, yeah, a bit more mystery to the whole story. But anyway, so here the great goddess Athena comes down. She flew down from the heights of Olympus and she reached Ithaca, and she appears as a visitor. So she appears as a visitor, Mentes, chief of the Taphians, bronze spear in hand. So she actually changes gender as well. She appears as a male. And she finds the suitors. Now, these are men who have just taken up residence in Odysseus's palace, and all with a view to eventually marrying his wife, Penelope, the queen, but just hanging out, eating the food from his estate, flirting with his maidservants, his slaves, girls. And so this is what Athena finds. She found the insolent suitors sitting in front of the doors on ox hides from beasts they had slaughtered themselves, i.e., from Odysseus's household, playing at counters. Their pages and squires, they had their staff as well, were busy mixing water and wine in bowls. Others were wiping tables with sponges, then laying them, while others were setting out plentiful servings of meat. So the suitors are living high on the hog in Odysseus's home. Godlike Telemachus, so this is Odysseus' son, sitting troubled among the suitors, imagining how his noble father might arrive from somewhere, throw the suitors from the palace, win honor, and rule his own again, was first to see her. Thinking of it, sitting among the suitors, he saw Athena and went straight to the doorway, ashamed a stranger should wait so long at the gates. So that tells us that the suitors and all their staff and hangers-on are not observing the polite manners of a palace. Basically they've left Athena, who's in disguise, just standing at the doorway hanging around, and he, the young prince, is the one who goes to greet her. Approaching her, he clasped her right hand, took her spear of bronze, and spoke to her winged words. Welcome, stranger. Here you will find hospitality, and after you have eaten, you may tell us why you are here. This is a great instance of the Homeric hospitality, because you never know that the person at the gate might be a god or goddess in disguise, right? So that is a good reason to always exercise this politeness, this courtesy, this hospitality. At this, he led the way, and Pallas Athena followed. Once inside the high hall, he took the spear and set it in a polished rack by a tall pillar with other spears that belonged to loyal Odysseus. He led Athena herself to a handsome, richly carved chair, spread a linen cloth over it, and seated her there with a footstool for her feet. He drew up an ornate stool for himself as well, away from the suitors, lest a stranger should shun the food, annoyed by the din, finding himself in a crowd of insolent men, and so he might ask news of his absent father. So that's his objective. That's what he is kind of obsessed with. Do you know anything about my father? Okay, so Athena introduces herself as Mentes. And he complains about the suitors, who have taken over here. They're just using all his father's estate and as if they own the place. And he wonders, is his father ever going to come back?
I'm guessing there's some meaning to mentes that might.
Yes, it means like it's someone who's a mentor, really. It's someone who's a protector in some ways, or an educator. So that's why she's there. She's here to put some ideas into Telemachus's head.
What a wonderful
Um,
idea, isn't it?
isn't it great?
That
Yeah,
you could have this mighty goddess Athene as your mentor.
yeah. That's how beloved Odysseus and his household is to the gods. Um, So she says, well, I'll tell you all openly. Right? But obviously, that's not quite right. I am Mentes, the wise Anchialus' son, lord of the seagoing Taphians. Now, as you see, with my ship and crew, I beach here in my journey over the wine-dark sea. Sorry, sidebar. Wine-dark sea is one of the very most famous Homeric similes. So he talks of the sea as wine-dark, the same color as wine. To foreigners speaking to mess, trading for copper and carrying glittering iron. My ship lies there, away from the city, next to open land in Resfron harbour, and below wooden Neon. Let us call each other friend, as our fathers did, friends of old. Go and ask that old hero, Laertes, if you like, who no longer comes to the palace, they say, but endures his sorrows far off in the fields, with an aged woman for servant, who serves his food and drink when weariness grips his limbs as he toils among the slopes of his vineyard. I came because men said that Odysseus was here among his people, but the gods seem to have prevented his returning. Since he has not vanished from the earth yet, I imagine he's alive and a prisoner on some island in the wide sea, held by cruel and savage folk who keep him there by force. Though I am no seer nor trained in augury, I will prophesy to you what the immortal gods put in my mind and what I believe will be. Though iron shackles hold him, he will not be kept from his own land much longer. A man of many resources, he will find a way to return. But tell me truly, if you, tall as you are really Odysseus' son. Your head and your fine eyes are amazingly like him, for we were often together before he set out for Troy, where the bravest of the Argives sailed in their hollow ships. But I have never seen Odysseus since that day, nor he me. So here the goddess has come to be exactly what Telemachus needs at that moment, to bring him hope about his father maybe still being alive.
There's a kind of rivalry, isn't there, between Athena and Poseidon, who kind of vexes
Exactly,
Odysseus along the way here.
exactly right. Yeah. Poseidon has, for various reasons which become clear later on, has done his best to prevent Odysseus coming home.
And I think even with the naming of Athens, right, there was some rivalry between the two.
100%. Yes. So Athena and Poseidon were rivals about which of them the people of Athens would worship as their key god. And Athena gave the olive, and I think Poseidon gave his horses. But it was the olive and Athena who won the day.
Oh, I think I had the version where he gave them a salty spring or something.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was horses. I could be wrong.
Hmm.
Okay, so Telemachus complains about the suitors, these men, and this is, I suppose, a kind of it's a coming to he's coming of age, and he knows that these other men, these suitors who've just kind of invaded the house, he knows that they are doing the wrong thing, but he is just him. He doesn't have troops behind him. He doesn't have any authority to tell them to, F off out of there, even though that's what he wants to do. But he's just essentially a boy. That's how they regard him. But he knows that they are doing wrong by having occupied his father's house. And so Athena tells him, well, you need to go and find out exactly what's happened about your father. Call the Achaean lords, and Achaean was a term we learned from the Iliad. It just means the Greek lords together tomorrow. Speak to them all with the gods for witness. Tell the suitors to disperse, each to his home. And if your mother's heart urges her to marry, let her go back to her great father's house, where there were ready a wedding feast and a wealth of gifts, fitting for a well-beloved daughter, on the assumption that Odysseus is dead. And I will give you good advice if you will hear me. Man the best ship you have with 20 oarsmen. Go and seek news of your absent father. Some mortal may tell you, or perhaps a rumor sent by Zeus to bring news to man. Go to Pylos first and then question the noble Nestor. Then to Sparta, to yellow-haired Menelaus. Last with the bronze-clad Achaeans to reach home. If you hear your father is living and sailing home, then however troubled you are, endure for another year. But if you hear he is dead, return to your own land. Build a mound with all the funeral rites, generous ones as is fitting, and give your mother away to a new husband. When you have settled and done all this, use heart and mind to plan how to kill the suitors in your palace, openly or by guile, since it is not right for you to follow childish ways, being no more a child. Perhaps you have not heard what fame Orestes won among men, destroying his father's murderer, cunning Aegisthus for killing his noble father. You too take courage, my friend, since I see you are tall and fine, so that many a man unborn will praise you. But now I must go to my swift ship, and my crew who will be weary of waiting. Take note yourself of my words and consider them. And so Athena departs like a bird, as we're told. So this is kind of the challenge for young Telemachus to find out what has really happened to his father. And when you think about it, this is in a time when it was very difficult, obviously, to find out what might have happened to somebody else in the Greek world. It waited on ships and tides. There was no other way of finding out. So why don't we just talk about that section, and then we might move on to a different one.
Judith, I like that last bit there. The goddess, bright-eyed Athene, soared upwards like a bird, and I like the fact that he says he felt that he felt what had passed in his spirit and was awed, realizing a god had been with him, and God like himself, he at once rejoined the suitors. So isn't that so he realized it was Athene.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of even in that in itself is a moment of acquiring more knowledge, isn't it? It's acquiring a bit more insight, to realize what's actually happened.
And God like himself, he at once rejoined the suitors. So yeah, so it gave him strength, it gave him courage, and gave him bravery too.
Yeah. And he's got a purpose now. He's got a focus. He's got a challenge. He's got a hero's journey to undertake himself.
Yeah.
So Telemachus has a slightly extraordinary capacity to perceive things as they are, because later he's also, I think, the first, isn't he, to recognize his father? Is he the first?
I don't, maybe he is. Sorry, I've lost track a bit. Yeah, I can't remember the sequence of the people who gradually come to recognize
Oh
him. But
no, it's
yes, I
probably
mean,
or it could have been the servant slave guy, but
yeah, there's
either
this
way,
sequence of people. It's kind of
yeah,
this suspense in which one person after another thinks or is not
yeah.
sure. Yeah. But yeah, so Telemachus has got this challenge now, this purpose. He's not just aimlessly sitting around feeling frustrated and resentful about the suitors. Now he knows what he has to do.
He has to plan their murder, as you do.
Oh, so just talking about the people who eventually, in the end, recognize Odysseus, but Eurycleia is one of them. So this section, this end of book one, Telemachus and Eurycleia. I'll just Yeah, so Telemachus went to his bed with his mind full of thoughts, to his room high above a fine courtyard with its clear view, and faithful Eurycleia, daughter of Ops, Paisonor's son, carrying a blazing torch, waited on him. Laertes, that's Odysseus' father, had bought her himself long ago, so she's a slave, when she was still quite young, at the cost of 20 oxen, and honoured her in his palace as he honoured his loyal wife, never lying with her for fear of his wife's anger. Now she carried the blazing torches for Telemachus, since of all the women it was she who loved him most, having nursed him as a child. He opened the door to the well-made room, and sitting on the bed took off his soft tunic and placed it in the wise old woman's hands. Folding and smoothing the tunic, she hung it on a peg by the wooden bedstead and went out of the room, closing the door by its silver handle, shooting the bolt by means of its leather thong. There all night long, wrapped in a woolen fleece, Telemachus planned in his mind the journey Athena proposed. So Eurycleia, this slave lady, she is one of the first few to recognize Odysseus when he finally comes home. So, but here she's introduced, and we meet her and get her potted history. Okay, so I might just go up to the top again and find. Let's go home and see what other sections would be good to read.
I don't want to jump ahead, but when obviously Polyphemus, the Cyclops, is very interesting, and Circe.
It is,
But
yes.
yeah.
So I'm thinking, I think what Sam wanted us to read was Odysseus and Nausicaa. He wanted the games in Phaeacia, so I'm not, yeah, we may or may not do that. And then Polyphemus the Cyclops. So we might do that. Odysseus and Circe is also excellent. So why don't we do Odysseus and Nausicaa for next? So this is where Odysseus has been, in his voyage around, again, trying to get home, but always being hit by a storm or shipwrecked or other problems that prevent him getting there. And so here he's been shipwrecked on the island. What's the
Isn't
island
that,
called?
if I recall, wasn't he nearly home at one point? And then
Yes,
when he was
yes.
sleeping, his crewmates found the bag that someone had given him, the gods or something, with a wind in it, and they thought he'd smuggled off some treasure for himself or something, and so they opened it up, and it blew them way out to sea. And this is where the terrible kind of troubles begin, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of things like that. Okay, so Odysseus has been washed up on the island and city of the Phaeacians. Uh, and Athena comes to visit, again with a view to looking after Odysseus. And so she visits the princess of this area, Nausicaa. And Athena gives Nausicaa, the princess, the idea to go and take her maidservants and go and prepare all their clothing, or do a big wash day, and suggests she better go and do that. Let's go and wash the garments at daybreak. I will go with you to help, so you can have it done without delay. With this, the goddess bright-eyed Athena left for Olympus after speaking to Nausicaa. Dawn came, lovely and enthroned, and woke Nausicaa of the beautiful robes, who was wondering at her dream, set off through the palace to tell her dear father and mother. And so she tells them that she needs the carriage so she can take the dirty clothes from the palace down to the river to wash. And she says, I have to think of all this. Again, Athena has put this idea in her head. So she said this being too shy to speak to her father about the possibility of marriage, but he understood it all and answered, my child, I don't grudge you mules or anything else. Go, and the servants will ready a high-sided, strong-wheeled wagon with a hood above. So they get this carriage ready, and a day's picnic, and Nausicaa takes up the whip. She's going to drive and flicks the rules to start them. With a clatter of hoofs, they took off smartly, carrying the girl in the clothing and the maids too to keep her company. So they're going to have a big old fun girl date out the river. When they came to the river, lovely with streams and never failing pools, With enough clear water bubbling up and brimming over to wash the dirtiest clothes, they unharnessed the mules and drove them along the bank of the swirling river to graze on the honey-sweet grass of the water meadows. They lifted armfuls of clothes from the wagon, carried them down to the clear black water, and trod them thoroughly in the pools, vying with one another. When they washed the load and rinsed away the dirt, they spread the garments in lines on the beach, where the breaking waves washed the shingle cleanest. After bathing and rubbing themselves with oil, they ate their meal on the riverbank and waited for the clothes to dry in the sun. When they had enjoyed their food, Nausicaa and her maids threw off their headgear and played with a ball, white-armed Nausicaa leading the accompanying song. As Artemis with her bow wanders the high mountain ridges of Taygetus and Erymanthus, delighting to chase wild boar and the swift deer, while the nymphs, daughters of Aegeus bearing Zeus, join in the sport, and Leto, her mother, is glad because Artemis has a head taller than they are, and easily known, though all are lovely, so this unwed girl shone out among the maids. So they just have this big game. They've had their picnic, they've had a game, they're about to pack up and go home, but Athena had a different idea. And Odysseus, who's been shipwrecked, exhausted and asleep, wakes up and thinks, what's this noise? He hears the girls playing and shouting and carrying on, and he emerges from the bushes, stark naked, breaking a leafy branch from the thicket with his strong right hand with which to hide his manhood. He advanced like a mountain lion, sure of its strength, that defies the wind and rain with blazing eyes, leaping among the sheep and cattle, or following the wild deer's trail, or even driven by hunger, attacking the flocks in the strongly built fold. So Odysseus, in his need, would have faced this crowd of girls with flowing hair, naked as he was. But streaked with brine, he terrified them so that they fled in fear at random over the sand spits. Only Alcinous's daughter, that's Nausicaa, stood her ground, since Athena inspired her and drove the fear from her body. She stood and faced Odysseus, and he debated whether to clasp the knees of this lovely girl as a suppliant, or whether to keep his distance and try her with courteous words, in hope she might give him some clothes and show him the road to the city. As he debated, he thought it better to hold off and try her with courteous words, in case she should take offence if he clasped her knees. So he spoke to her promptly with charm and subtlety. So this is an extremely famous scene in literature, this encounter between the naked, shipwrecked, exhausted Odysseus holding a branch in front of himself for decency, and Nausicaa, the princess, and her girls who were just terrified and run away. But Athena has given her courage. And so, yeah, there's a conversation, and Nausicaa of the white arms says, stranger, you seem neither unknowing nor ill-intentioned. It is Olympian Zeus himself who brings men good fortune, to the virtuous or not, as he wills. And since he has brought you this, whatever it may be, you must endure it. But now you are come to our land and city, you shall not go short of clothes or anything else a hard-pressed suppliant deserves from those he meets. I will show you the way to town and tell you whom we are. This is a Phaeacian's country and city, and I am the daughter of valiant Achaeans, in whom the Phaeacians vest their majesty and power. So again, it comes back to this idea of hospitality. Nausicaa doesn't know who this strange man is who's washed up naked on the beach, but she offers him hospitality because that's the right thing to do and because Athena's given her courage. So it's a great scene.
It's kind of nice that you pick up hints here about how the Greeks would have treated their homeless people if they had homeless people. And, we know with the cynics and that people tolerated them and actually treated them as fairly wise or whatever. And yeah, interesting anyway.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to say about this scene is at various other points through history, various critics thought it was highly improper and kind of undignified for a princess to be doing the washing for the palace and playing ball with her maids. It was kind of thought, well, this can't be right. This can't be genuine because it's so undignified for a princess. But actually, from nowadays, I think we have a more nuanced understanding of kind of Bronze Age culture where it wouldn't have been strange at all. I mean, yeah, I think we've got, I would say, a better perspective now. But I would say, yeah, it was just interesting that throughout some earlier periods, it was thought so so undignified. But the thing is, Nausicaa is not undignified. You know, she, in her honesty and openness, she manifests the dignity of what she is. She's the daughter of the king and welcomes a guest.
You kind of get a sense that the Greeks had maybe the idea that the royalty or the lords or whatever should sort of have these excellent qualities like arete, you know, and so rather than being sort of separated from the people, they were sort of exemplars to the people.
Yeah, for sure. So then she calls all her maidservants back to not be afraid of, you know, a strange man. For we are dear to the gods, she says. This must be some luckless wanderer landed here. Strangers and beggars come from Zeus, and even a little gift is welcome. So bring him food and drink, girls, and bathe him and give him some clothes. And they bring a tunic and cloak for him to wear and help him out. But also she's got a word of wisdom here. She says, listen to what I say, my white-armed girls. This man does not come to the godlike Phaeacians without the gods willing it. He seemed rough to me before, but now seems like one of the gods who rule the wide heavens. I wish such a man might be my husband here if he remains. But come, girls, give the stranger food and drink. So again, she's getting some insights about maybe there's something special about this man. So they head back to the palace, and Odysseus is praying to Athena. Listen to my prayer, for you failed to listen when the great earth shaker, that's Poseidon, wrecked my raft. Grant I may come before the Phaeacians as one to be helped and pitied. So he just hopes that Nausicaa's father, the king Alcinous, will be as open-hearted and generous as Nausicaa seems to be. And as befitting a royal house. And he is. He turns out to be. Okay, so then they have a games in honor of Odysseus, and then he hits the sea roads again, but then things go badly again. Okay, we'll do book 9, Polyphemus the Cyclops. Oh yeah, there's a lot of lead up here as well. So there's various other adventures before they get to the Cyclops cave.
The Lotus Eaters is interesting. That's sort of a drug type thing, isn't it?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's have a look at that one. So at this point, Odysseus is doing one of his flashbacks and telling what happened. He's now the narrator. So from Ismarus we sailed, and then Zeus sends a storm and scatters their ships again. There we stay for 2 days and nights, troubled at heart with weariness and grief. But when dawn of the lovely tresses gave birth to the 3rd day, we upped mast, hoisted the white sails, and took our seats aboard, and the wind and helmsman kept us on course. Now I would have reached home safely. It's, you know, again, he was that close. But as I was rounding Cape Malea, the north wind and waves and the ocean currents beat me away off course past Cythera. For 9 days I was driven by fierce winds over the teeming sea, but on the 10th we set foot on the shores of the Lotus Eaters, who eat its flowery food. On land we drew water, and my friends ate by the ships. Once we had tasted food and drink, I sent some of the men inland to discover what kind of human beings lived there, selecting 2 and sending a 3rd as herald. They left at once and came upon the Lotus Eaters, who had no thought of killing my comrades, but gave them lotus to eat. Those who ate the honey-sweet lotus fruit no longer wished to bring back word to us or sail for home. They wanted to stay with the lotus eaters, eating the lotus, forgetting all thoughts of return. I dragged those men back to the shore myself by force, while they wept and bound them tight in the hollow ships, pushing them under the benches. Then I ordered my men to embark quickly on the fast craft, fearing that others would eat the lotus and forget their homes. They boarded swiftly and took their places on the benches, then sitting in their rows, struck the grey water with their oars. So there's been a lot of debate and scholarship as to what this plant was that the lotus eaters actually ate that made them kind of forget everything else and just want to stay there in the one spot and forget all their other priorities. And honestly, again, this is something I haven't kept up with the scholarship on, but there are various suggested plants that it could have been that led to this kind of apathy, I guess, about anything else. But as Courtney says, it's kind of a parable about addiction, really, isn't it? It makes people obsessed and not willing to actually embark on anything else in life.
So it's a perennial problem.
Exactly. And I mean, Odysseus, makes them go cold turkey. He physically drags them back to the ships. But it's interesting that the thing that the lotus makes them do is forget their homes. They forget their families. They forget other priorities. They forget what they're actually doing in this, in this voyage. And again, this is the thing with if someone's living with addiction, they're not concerned about anything else. It's about whatever the product happens to be.
And there's this kind of play throughout this of how their bodies and senses are distorted in various ways, isn't there? Because the sirens, for example, hypnotize them, and Circe turns them into animals, and here their senses are dulled and they can't recall. So I guess the vital parts of the rational, whatever you want to call it, that part that makes us human beings is always at risk in some way, on these in this journey.
Yeah, it's kind of suppressed, isn't it, in this scenario?
And it's sort of like,
sorry, go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was just going to say, also it's like that short-term versus long-term mentality, or sort of Dionysian, and the distraction and pleasure and how that can kind of maybe set you off course from, home or longer term goals or ambitions. And how, seductive that is.
Yeah, and more deeply, who you are, he has to go back and reclaim his birthright, his telos in a sense, be Odysseus, not some dude sitting around chewing on lotus.
And also, yeah, Odysseus is responsible for these guys as well. That they can kind of tune out, but he never can, because he is responsible for them and attempting to bring them back to their homes.
And that's that sign of virtue again, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so then we get to the land of the Cyclops. A lawless, aggressive people who never lift their hands to plant or plow, but rely on the immortal gods, which is an interesting thought when you think about it. Because obviously, well, actually, it seems that everyone relies on the immortal gods from time to time. But anyway, he says, wheat, barley, and vines with their richly clustered grapes grow there without ploughing or sowing, and rain from Zeus makes them flourish. The Cyclopes have no council meetings, no code of law, but live in echoing caves on the mountain slopes. And each man lays down the law to his wives and children and disregards his neighbors. So this is kind of an anti-society, isn't it? It's a man where each man is for himself. They don't have any communal, it's not actually a society. It's a kind of a lawless rivalry, I guess. But they do have a lot of goats. Countless wild goats inhabit it, since there was nothing to stop them, no hunters to suffer the hardship of beating a path through its woods or to roam its mountaintops. There were no flocks and no ploughed fields, but always unsown and untilled it is free of mankind and nurtures only bleating goats. Goats are pretty tough. They don't need to be farmed. They just, they just look after themselves. So the Cyclopes have no vessels with crimson painted prows, no shipwrights to build sound boats with oars, no craftsmen, that is, who might also have turned into a fine colony. So they're kind of fortunate that they have a good climate because they don't have any of the amenities of an actual society. And they've got a harbour. And they've got fresh water. There's a stream of bright water. And some God must have guided us through the murky night, since it was too dark to see. A mist shrouded the ships, and a moon covered with cloud gave not a gleam of light. No one could see the land or the long breakers striking the beach until we had run our oared ships aground. Once they were beached, we lowered sail and went on shore. Then we lay down where we were to sleep and waited for the light of dawn. So they obviously, plenty of goats, they kill some goats to eat. And they had a big feast. And then they wanted to try and actually find out whose land they are in. With this, I went aboard and ordered my crew to follow and loose the cables. When we reached the nearby shore, we saw a deep cave overhung with laurels at the cliff's edge close to the sea. Large herds of sheep and goats were penned there at night, and round it was a raised yard walled by deep-set stones, tall pines, and high-crowned oaks. There a giant spent the night, not one that grazed his herds far off alone, and keeping clear of others, lived in lawless solitude. He was born a monster and a wonder, not like any ordinary human, but like some wooded peak of the high mountains that stands there isolated to our gaze. So obviously it's a situation of great danger and uncertainty. And Odysseus takes his 12 best men and goes forward. He takes some special wine that a priest of Apollo had given him. And he filled a large goat skin with the wine, takes it along with some food in a bag, since my instinct told me the giant would come at us quickly, a savage being with huge strength, knowing nothing of right or law. So the giant was out when they arrived. So we went inside and marveled at the cave's contents. There were baskets full of cheeses and pens crowded with lambs and kids, each flock with its firstlings, later ones and newborns separated, the pails and bowls for milking, all solidly made with smooth whey. So first the men wanted to take some cheese and go and take some lambs. But Odysseus, you see, this is where his hubris gets the better of him. Basically, they would have been better off just to, take something and go. But I would not listen, though it would have been best, wishing to see the giant himself and test his hospitality. Again, this idea of hospitality. Odysseus wants to test whether he will be welcomed by the giant.
And this is what's
When
so
he did,
cool about Odysseus, right? Because later he wants to listen to the sirens, to hear their song. So he's
that's right.
he wants to experience everything.
Yeah, exactly. Even though it leads to trouble. Okay, so the giant comes back. He arrived bearing a huge weight of dry wood to burn at supper time, and he flung it down inside the cave with a crash. Gripped by terror, we shrank back into a deep corner. He drove his well-fed flocks into the wide cave, the ones he milked, leaving the rams and the he-goats outside in the broad courtyard. Then he lifted his door, a huge stone, and set it in place. 22 four-wheeled wagons could not have carried it, yet such was the great rocky mass he used for a door. There he sat and milked the ewes and bleating goats in order, putting her young to each. Next he curdled half of the white milk and stored the whey in wicker baskets, leaving the rest in pails for him to drink for his supper. When he had busied himself with his tasks and kindled a fire, he suddenly saw us and said, "Strangers, who are you? Where do you sail from over the sea roads? Are you on business, or do you roam at random like pirates who chance their lives to bring evil to others? Well, actually, they're kind of like pirates, basically. In a sense, they're kind of random roamers, to their peril. Our spirits fell at his words, in terror at his loud voice and monstrous size. Nevertheless, I answered him, saying, "We are Achaeans returning from Troy, driven over the ocean depths by every wind that blows. Heading for home, we are forced to take another route, a different course, as Zeus, I suppose, intended. We are followers of Agamemnon, Atreus' son, whose fame spreads widest on earth. So great was that city he sacked and host he slew. But we, for our part, come as suppliant to your knees, hoping for hospitality," that term again, "and the kindness that is due to strangers. Good sir, do not refuse us. Respect the gods. We are suppliants, and Zeus protects visitors and suppliants. Zeus, the god of guests, who follows the steps of sacred travelers." His answer was devoid of pity. "Stranger, you are a foreigner or a fool, telling me to fear and revere the gods, since the Cyclopes care nothing for aegis-bearing Zeus. We are greater than they. I would spare neither you nor your friends to evade Zeus's anger, but only as my own heart prompted." His words were designed to fool me, but failed. I was too wise for that, and answered him with cunning words. "Poseidon, Earthshaker, smashed my ship to pieces, wrecking her on the rocks that edge your island, driving her close to the headlands so the winds threw her on shore. But I and my men here escaped destruction." Devoid of pity, he was silent in response, but leaping up, laid hands on my crew. Two he seized and dashed to the ground like whelps, and their brains ran out and stained the earth. He tore them limb from limb for his supper, eating the flesh and entrails, bone and marrow like a mountain lion, leaving nothing. Helplessly we watched these cruel acts, raising our hands to heaven and weeping. When the Cyclops filled his huge stomach with human flesh and had drunk pure milk, he lay down in the cave, stretched out among his flocks. Then I formed a courageous plan to steal up to him, draw my sharp sword, and feeling for the place where the midriff supports the liver, stab him there. But the next thought checked me. Trapped in the cave, we would certainly die, since we'd have no way to move the great stone from the wide entrance. So sighing, we waited for bright day. And so 2 more men get eaten in the morning, but then the Cyclops is going to take his animals out of the cave. He effortlessly lifts this huge stone door. Then
No,
whistling
this is,
loudly, sorry, go
I was
ahead.
just going to say it's strangely reminiscent of The Hobbit. There's a scene in The Hobbit where um, they stumble upon a group of trolls, and the trolls capture um, the dwarves. It's a bit more PG, a bit more kid friendly, and rather than just gobble them up on the spot, they're sitting on the dwarves or roasting them over the fire and debating about how to cook them. And the Hobbit, a bit like Odysseus, is the tricky one, and he pretends to be the voice of one of the trolls and says, "Oh, you've got to put pepper on him," and starts getting them to debate that they're not cooking it right, and they start fighting over it, and eventually this leads to them being able to escape. But it's kind of it's reminiscent of it. I bet there's a connection. It's kind of fun.
I bet there is. I'm sure it was with a remembrance of this Homeric episode that Tolkien wrote it. Okay, so Odysseus is a bit at a loss. He's leaving. So the Cyclops leaves him with murder in his heart, searching for a way to take vengeance on him if Athena would grant me inspiration. The best plan seemed to be this. So the Cyclops had a club, and so it was so enormous. It was like the mast of a 20-oared black ship. Approaching it, I cut off a 6-foot length, gave it to my men, and told them to smooth the wood. Then, standing by it, I sharpened the end to a point and hardened the point in the blazing fire, after which I hid it carefully in one of the heaps of dung that lay around the cave. I ordered the men to cast lots as to which of them should dare to help me raise the stake and twist it into the Cyclops' eye when sweet sleep took him. The lot fell on the very ones I would have chosen, 4 of them, with myself making a 5th. So in the evening, back comes the Cyclops. He herds all his animals swiftly, every one into the deep cave, leaving none in the broad yard. commanded to do so by a god or because of some premonition. Then he lifted the huge door stone and set it in place, and sat down to milk the ewes and bleating goats in order, putting her young to each. But when he had busied himself at his tasks, he again seized 2 of my men and began to eat them. That was when I went up to him, holding an ivy-wood bowl full of dark wine, and said, "Here, Cyclops, have some wine to follow your meal of human flesh, so you can taste the sort of drink we carried in our ship. I was bringing the drink to you as a gift, hoping you might pity me and help me on my homeward path, but your savagery is past bearing. Cruel man, why would anyone on earth ever visit you again when you behave so badly?" At this he took the cup and drained it, and found the sweet drink so delightful he asked for another draught. "Give me more freely, then quickly tell me your name, that I may give you a guest gift, one that will please you. Among us Cyclopes, the fertile earth produces rich grape clusters, and Zeus' rain swells them, but this is a taste from a stream of ambrosia and nectar." As he finished speaking, I handed him the bright wine. 3 times I poured and gave it to him, and 3 times foolishly he drained it. When the wine had fuddled his wits, I tried him with subtle words. "Cyclops, you ask my name, and I will tell it. Give me afterwards a guest gift as you promised. My name is Nobody. Nobody. My father, mother, and friends call me." These are my words, and this his cruel answer. "Then my gift is this: I will eat Nobody last of all his company and all the others before him." As he spoke, he reeled and toppled over on his back. His thick neck twisted to one side, and all-conquering sleep overpowered him. In his drunken slumber, he vomited wine and pieces of human flesh. Then I thrust the stake into the depths of the ashes to heat it, and inspired my men with encouraging words so none would hang back from fear. When the olive-wood stake was glowing hot and ready to catch fire despite its greenness, I drew it from the coals. Then my men stood around me, and a god breathed courage into us. They held the sharpened olive-wood stake and thrust it into his eye, while I threw my weight on the end and twisted it round and round, as a man bores the timbers of a ship with a drill that others twirl lower down with a strap held at both ends, and so keep the drill continuously moving. We took the red-hot stake and twisted it round and round like that in his eye, and the blood poured out despite the heat. His lids and brows were scorched by flame from the burning eyeball, and its roots crackled with fire. As a great axe or adze causes a vast hissing when the smith dips it in cool water to temper it, strengthening the iron, so his eye hissed against the olive-wood stake. Then he screamed terribly, and the rock echoed. Seized by terror, we shrank back as he wrenched the stake, wet with blood, from his eye. He flung it away in frenzy and called to the Cyclopes, his neighbours who lived in caves on the windy heights. They heard his cry, and crowding him from every side, they stood by the cave mouth and asked what was wrong. "Polyphemus, what terrible pain is this that makes you call through deathless night and wake us? Is a mortal stealing your flocks, or trying to kill you by violence or treachery?" Out of the cave came mighty Polyphemus' voice. "Nobody, my friends, is trying to kill me by violence or treachery." To this they replied with winged words, "If you're alone and nobody does you violence, it's an inescapable sickness that comes from Zeus. Pray to the Lord Poseidon, our father." So this clever stratagem of Odysseus to call himself Nobody has disarmed the helpers of Polyphemus. Off they went, while I laughed to myself how the name and the clever scheme had deceived him. Meanwhile the Cyclops, groaning and in pain, groped and laboured to lift the stone from the door. Then he sat in the entrance, arms outstretched to catch anyone stealing past among his sheep. That was how foolish he must have thought I was. I considered the best way of escaping and saving myself and my men from death. I dreamed up all sorts of tricks and schemes, as a man will in a life or death matter. It was an evil situation. This was the plan that seemed best. The rams were fat with thick fleeces, fine large beasts with deep black wool. These I silently tied together in threes with twists of willow, on which that lawless monster Polyphemus slept. The middle one was to carry one of my men, while the other 2 on either side to protect him. So there was a man to every 3 sheep. As for me, I took the pick of the flock and curled below his shaggy belly, gripped his back, and lay there face upwards, patiently gripping his fine fleece tight in my hands. Then, sighing, we waited for the light. As soon as rosy-fingered dawn appeared, the males rushed out to graze, while the unmilked females, udders bursting, bleated in the pens. Their master, tormented by agonies of pain, felt the backs of the sheep as they passed him, but foolishly failed to see my men tied under the rams' bellies. My ram went last, burdened by the weight of his fleece, and me and my teeming thoughts. And as he felt its back, mighty Polyphemus spoke to him. My fine ram, why leave the cave like this last with the flock? You have never lagged behind before, always the first to step out proudly and graze on the tender grass shoots, always first to reach the flowing river, and first to show your wish to return at evening at the fold. Today you're last of all. You must surely be grieving over your master's eye, blinded by an evil man and his wicked friends, when my wits were fuddled with wine. Nobody, I say, has not yet escaped death. If only you had senses like me and the power of speech to tell me where he hides himself from my anger, then I'd strike him down. His brains will be sprinkled over the floor of the cave, and my heart will be eased with the pain that nobody has brought me. When we were out of earshot, I shouted to the Cyclops, mocking him. It seems he was not such a weakling then, Cyclops, that man whose friends you meant to tear apart and eat in your echoing cave. Stubborn brute, not shrinking from murdering your guests in your own house. Your evil deeds were bound for sure to fall on your own head. Zeus and the other gods have had their revenge on you.
So this is kind of interesting, isn't it? Like how Odysseus, his superpower, if you like, is his intelligence, but also gets him in loads of trouble. There's a kind of edge to it where he's not satisfied just to use his intelligence to get what he wants. He has to also gloat about it sometimes, doesn't he?
That's right. Yeah, exactly right. I would say this scene too, the men clinging on the undersides of Polyphemus's sheep as they make their escape out of his cave was turned out to be a great favorite in Greek art. And so on many red figure and black figure pots, you can see Odysseus or one of his men clinging onto the underside of a sheep. But I was just thinking about this recently. It's actually really hard to hold your own weight in that position for an extended period. In that position is it's extremely hard to do. So it's another measure of not only Odysseus's kind of ingenuity, but his physical and mental strength as well.
But also the invention of literature, because here you're supposed to suspend, perhaps those sorts of judgments about what's actually possible and what's not.
Yeah, exactly. He stretches all those bounds. I remember reading the story when I was quite young, and the idea of the sharpened stick in the one eye of the Cyclops was, it's a very memorable kind of scene. And again, this was something that was very much a favorite in Greek art.
Yeah, I was very surprised reading it as a young person too, how violent it was in sections.
Yes, that's right. You got the cannibalism to begin with, and then the bloody revenge. But of course, things aren't going to go smoothly next either. Do you want to do Circe, or do we?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because we haven't
Yeah,
really discussed Odysseus's infidelity, which kind of comes up a lot.
yeah. Okay, let's do that. Book 10. Oh yeah, this is the winds that the men unleash. So he goes to Aeolia, which is kind of supposed to be the home of the winds, I think. And the king there gives him a special ox skin with all the winds imprisoned in the bag for him to use, obviously. So he placed the bag in my hollow ship and tied it tight with shining silver wire, so not even the smallest breath might escape. But first he called on the west wind to blow and set my ships and their crews on their homeward course, though it was not to benefit us, ruined by our own foolishness. So one thing I haven't actually kind of done yet, but I think it's really important to do is when Odysseus is telling his own story, we know what an ingenious and clever man he is. And so the question must arise how reliable a narrator he actually is. that's also part of one of the kind of the constant subtext here is, well, is he telling the truth or is he not telling the truth? This is something that you have to be aware of with Odysseus is, yeah, he's obviously telling a tale, but how much of it do we believe? Is he a reliable narrator, basically? That's one thing to bear in mind. Okay, so 9 days and nights we sailed, and on our 10th, our own land was in sight. You go again, he's just that close to home, near enough to see men tending fires. Then sweet sleep came to me in my weariness, since I'd hauled on the sheets, that's the ropes and the sails, handing over to none of my crew in order to reach home more swiftly. So in a crisis, he's not going to delegate, he's going to do it all. Now my men talked among themselves, speculating about the treasures of gold and silver that Aeolus, mighty son of Hippotas, had given me. As they exchanged glances, they said, "Oh, how honoured and loved Odysseus is by the men of every land and city. He carries home fine things from the spoils of Troy, while we who went the same journey return empty-handed. Now Aeolus, for love alone, gives them all these gifts. Come on, let's see how much gold and silver there is in the bag." Among them, talking like this, wicked thoughts prevailed. They opened the bag, and all the winds rushed out. Then a tempest seized us and carried us out to sea away from our own land. Then I woke and debated in the depths of my heart whether to hurl myself from the ship and drown or suffer in silence among the living. I stayed and suffered. Wrapping my head in my cloak, I lay on the deck. So as my men groaned, the ships were carried back to the Aeolian island by a wicked gale. Okay, there's the Lystrygonians who are kind of more cannibals, escaped from the cannibals. Right, Circe's Island. And so, yeah, just to revert to that back for a moment, Odysseus doesn't like delegating because he doesn't actually trust any of his men to do anything properly. This is another thing that's maybe a bit of a lesson about, yeah, what leadership is like. Is Odysseus a good leader, or is he so kind of convinced of his own cleverness and the fact that, he's that much smarter than all his men? Is he really a good leader, or is he just kind of going in circles? Okay, so we sailed on with heavy hearts for the loyal friends lost, though happy to have escaped death ourselves, and came to the island of Aea, where Circe of the lovely tresses lived, a fateful goddess with a human voice, sister to the dark-minded Aedes, both children of the sun that lights the world, and Perse, daughter of the ocean. Here our ship closed ashore in silence, entering a harbour fit for vessels guided by a god. When we had gone ashore, we lay there for 2 days and nights, consumed by weariness and grief. But when dawn of the lovely tresses gave birth to the 3rd day, I took my sharp sword and spear and climbed swiftly from the ship to a high lookout point, hoping to see signs of men and hear their voices. I reached a rocky height with a wide view, and standing there, I saw smoke rising through thick scrub and woodland from the wide clearing where Circe's halls lay. Seeing that smoke from the fire, I pondered whether to go and explore, but it seemed better to return to the ship and the shore and allow my men a meal than send them to investigate. So yeah, he doesn't actually trust his men to get anything right, even just sending out a search party. Then as I neared the swift ship, some god took pity on me in that solitude and sent a great stag with great antlers right across my trail. The power of the sun had troubled him and sent him down from his woodland pasture to drink at the river's edge. As he came from the water, I struck him on the spine with my bronze spear in the center of his back, and it pierced right through, so he fell in the dust with a groan and his spirit passed. Sorry, interesting sidebar. Isn't it interesting that even a deer, even an animal, has a spirit, has some kind of psyche, some kind of animate sense which passes when it dies. It's an interesting idea that that again shows the kinship between humans and animals in the Greek worldview. Then I planted my foot on his carcass, drew the bronze spear from the wound, and laid it on the ground while I gathered willow shoots, then wove a rope 6 foot long, splicing them together end to end. Next, I tied the great creature's feet together and carried him down to the black ship on my back. Again, he's super strong as well. Using my spear to lean on, since he was too large to sling over my shoulder and steady with my hand, I threw him down in front of the ship and cheered my crew with comforting words, tackling each man in turn. So they're going to have a big feast,
The animal
and
spirit thing is interesting though, because we read in some of Plato's dialogues, right, where they talk about the kind of make references to some of the older cults. I think the Pythagoreans, and they kind of nod towards that notion of the transmigration of the soul, and in some of the older myths that a bad person or a greedy person or a vicious person might come back as a wolf or a fox or some lower animals. And presumably with Pythagoras, you could even come back, this is weird, as beans, as a bean plant. So they didn't eat beans, and it's not exactly clear why, but yeah, apparently you could come back as beans. Um, so maybe bean plants had a soul as well. And you see the same stuff in Epictetus, of course. He's saying sort of similar stuff, like man should not act in a manner to, make himself more animal-like and so on. But you feel like it's moved away from the sort of spiritual transmigration of soul stuff to something much more psychological, perhaps. Maybe that's a bit of a leap, but interesting anyway to kind of it'd be interesting to look at a study of someone who follows those sort of themes through.
yeah, true. But also, I think it ties in to what happens next with Circe. And so here Odysseus gives a bit of a recap. We don't need to do that. Um, okay, so Circe, the great magician goddess thing. So um, I split my armed comrades into two groups, each with its own leader. I took command of one, and the other was led by noble Eurylochus. Then we shook lots in a bronze helmet, and brave Eurylochus's lot leapt out. Off he went with 22 tearful men, leaving us behind with our grief. They found Circe's house of polished stone in a clearing in the forest glades. Round it wolves and mountain lions prowled, bewitched by Circe with her magic drugs. Instead of rushing to attack my men, they rose on their hind legs and wagged their tails. Like dogs fawning around their master, back from a feast, bringing them the tidbits they enjoy, the wolves and sharp-clawed lions fawned around my men, while they, seeing these dread creatures, were gripped by fear. They stood there at the gate of the goddess with lovely tresses, and they could hear Circe's sweet voice singing inside as she went to and fro in front of a vast divine tapestry, weaving the finely made, lovely, shining work of the goddesses.
On that note about the drugs, if you remember from Therapy of Desire, Nussbaum talks about pharmakos quite a bit. And if you recall, Epicurus, for example, had his tetrapharmakos, and which would translate to four drugs, I guess. But she was sort of making that point with the medical analogy that this idea of, if that's the word, pharmakos or something like that, that these causative drugs, poisons, could also be the same thing as magic spells and arguments, for example, later on, that could penetrate the soul and have an effect on the soul.
Oh, very much so. So someone like Empedocles, he was known as someone uh, whose utterances were pharmakoi, who, he uttered magical or kind of therapeutic utterances. So yes, definitely words could be pharmakoi for sure. In the hands of somebody with those powers, and Circe is one of these people. So here again we have this juxtaposition of humans and animals, and this idea that, well, can't, Circe with her powers has basically made humans into animals. And so it brings into high relief the kinship, I guess, between humans and particularly higher animals like wolves and lions. What's the difference? It's kind of the it's an uncomfortable conjunction here, partly because of the likeness between the human and the higher mammals.
But it also makes you think of that connection, right? That maybe some men are more like wolves, some men are more like lions, some men are more like pigs. And so say maybe her drug, if you like, or her power is that when men look upon her, they turn into these bestial type versions of themselves because presumably it's like a spell or a hex, but actually she's very attractive, could be.
Yeah. So and yeah, so they stood there at the gate of the goddess. So they're kind of stalled in kind of they don't really know what to do. They could hear Circe's sweet voice singing inside as she went to and fro in front of a vast divine tapestry. Then Polites, the dearest and most trusted of my friends, a man of initiative, spoke. Friends, a woman, a goddess perhaps, is singing sweetly within, walking to and fro in front of a great tapestry, and the whole place echoes. Let's call out to her now. At that they shouted and called to her, and Circe came to open the shining doors and invite them to enter, and so they innocently followed her inside. Eurylochus alone, suspecting it was a trap, stayed behind. She ushered the rest in and seated them on stools and chairs, and mixed them a brew of yellow honey and Pramnian wine with cheese and barley meal. But she mixed in wicked drugs as well, this is these pharmacoi, so that they might wholly forget their native land. When they had drunk the brew she gave them, she touched them with her wand and herded them into the pigsties. Now they had the shape and bristly hide, the features and voice of pigs, but their minds were unaltered from before. There they wept in their pens, and Circe gave them acorns, beech mast, and cornflower to eat, such as pigs feed on as they churn the mud. But Eurylochus ran back to the swift black ship to convey the news of his friends and their sad fate. Much as he wished to, he could not speak a word. His heart was so full of anguish, and his eyes filled with tears, and his mind with sorrow. Only when we questioned him, amazed, did he manage to say what had happened to his friends. So
I can
Eurylochus just
imagine Odysseus here, the narrator, and people are saying, "So what were you doing at this hot woman's house?" Well, she was a witch and she turned us all into animals. We weren't ourselves, really.
That's right. So obviously Odysseus has to go and investigate himself, right? Um, and yeah, he tells Eurylochus to stay with the ship again. But then Hermes, again, and it's another intervention from the gods, Hermes turns up. Hermes of the magic wand, sorry, of the golden wand, in the likeness of a young man at that charming age when down first covers the cheeks, met me as I approached. He clasped me by the hand and spoke to me. Wretched man, where are you off to, wandering the hills of an unknown island all alone? Your friends are penned in Circe's house, pigs in close-set sties. Have you come to free them? I tell you, you won't return. You'll end up like the rest. But I will save you and keep you free from harm. You must take a powerful herb with you and go to Circe's house, and it will ward off the day of evil. I will tell you all Circe's fatal wiles. She will mix a drink for you, blending drugs with the food, but even so she will fail to enchant you. The powerful herb I will give you will prevent it. Let me tell you the rest. When Circe strikes you with her length of wand, draw your sharp sword and rush at her as if you intend to kill her. She will be seized with fear. Then she'll invite you to her bed, and don't refuse the goddess's favors if you want her to free your men and care for you too. But make her swear a solemn oath by the blessed gods that she won't try to harm you with her mischief, lest when you are naked she robs you of courage and manhood.
I'm pretty
So
sure I
this is
know
kind
what
of
the
complex.
I'm pretty sure I know what the herb is.
Do you? Go ahead.
It's garlic.
You think so?
Yeah, because his breath was so bad afterward that she wouldn't get near him.
I don't know. Okay, so then with this, the slayer of Argus, that's Hermes, pulled the herb from the ground and gave it to me, pointing out its features. It was black at the root with a milk-white flower. Moldy, the gods call it, difficult for mortals to uproot, though the gods, of course, can do anything. Hermes headed off through the wooded isle to high Olympus, while I approached the house of Circe, thinking black thoughts as I went along. There I stood at the gate of the goddess of the lovely tresses, and I called to her, and she heard my voice. She came out straight away to open the shining doors and invited me to enter. I did so with a troubled heart. Once inside, she brought me a beautiful silver-embossed chair, richly made, and with a stool for my feet. Then she mixed me a drink in a golden cup, and with evil intent added her drugs. When she gave it me and I drank it down, though without feeling its enchantment, She struck at me with her wand and cried, "Off to your sty now, and lie there with your friends." At this I drew my sharp sword and rushed at her as if I meant to kill her, but with a cry she slipped beneath the blade to clasp my knees, and weeping spoke to me with winged words. "What man are you, and where are you from? What city is yours, and who are your parents? I wonder that you drank my potion were not bewitched. No other man, when once he drank and swallowed it, has ever withstood the spell. Surely your mind is not one to be swayed. You must be Odysseus, that man of many resources, whom the slayer of Argus with the golden wand told me would come from Troy here, travelling homewards in his swift dark ship. Come, sheathe your sword, and let us two go to my bed, so we learn to trust each other by twining in love." So she's already heard from Hermes herself about Odysseus. So Hermes is acting a bit of a double agent role here. He's kind of given Circe the heads up, but he's also told Odysseus what to do. And so anyway, they get acquainted, and things improve from there.
So wait a sec. You didn't say if he said yes or no.
Well, I think he says yes.
Couldn't help himself.
Couldn't help himself.
What
Yeah.
did he say? He says, "You've turned my friends to animals in your house and now detain me, drawing me to your room, to your bed with cunning intent to rob me of courage and manhood when I am naked. I have no desire to go to bed with you, goddess, unless you swear a solemn oath by the blessed gods not to try and harm me with your mischief." Oh, well thought. Yes, lucky you thought of that.
That's right. And she swears the oath, and there we go. So, and then the handmaids get everything ready.
Can you
So, yeah.
imagine a
So go
modern
on.
feminist reading of this? It would be a bit cringy.
I don't
Well,
know,
I mean,
actually, because there's a lot of power there, isn't there? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't, yeah, he kind of beats everything, but yeah, he couldn't help himself, like that's a weakness, isn't it?
But it's definitely the woman's fault that everyone acted badly.
I don't think it is. She wasn't married, he was. Yeah, different circumstances, So if you're going to judge it morally, then
True. When you're on a long journey from home, there's a whole thing about a different postcode, isn't there?
so
maybe.
there's an excellent novel by Madeline Miller, and I can't even think what it's called, but it's about Circe and Odysseus. Well, it's mainly about Circe, but in the novel, and I think it's kind of implied here in Homer, Circe and Hermes were an item. So she was a goddess herself, and she was involved with Hermes, who was a god, obviously. So um, and Odysseus, but Odysseus is immortal. So there's that kind of, what's the word, power imbalance going on as well.
Well, Judith, why would Hermes help him as well then? To help them both. Wasn't it Hermes that just helped him?
Yeah. Hermes helped him out as well. I think Hermes is kind of not unfriendly to the Greeks. I think that so I think generally Hermes and Athena tend to work together a bit. I could be wrong about that. So I think that's what's going on there. But also, yeah, I mean, I think Hermes doesn't really have a particular axe to grind. So yeah, I'm not really sure.
There's a fun, I'm just wondering if there's any connection, but there's a fun section in one of Epictetus's discourses where he talks about the wand of Hermes, isn't there? And I know he says, it's the wand that can turn everything to gold, but I'm also wondering about how it's the wand that defends against poisonous drafts. So, it prevents man from having his reason tampered with, in a sense, by an external source. I was wondering if that connection fits.
Could well be, because of course Hermes is the god of communication. And so, yeah, if a person's kind of pathways for communication are distorted, then that's not a good thing. So yeah, maybe that's it.
Because I think in that section in the discourses, the comment is something like you can use Hermes wand to transform everything into stuff that you can use,
Yeah,
material for your benefit. There is no real obstacle. Anything that comes along, because you have Hermes wand at hand, you can transform everything.
yeah, yeah, it is, absolutely. Okay, so again, we're in a kind of a situation where the men have been turned into animals. They're in a situation where they're not in a position to achieve their mission. Uh, and so eventually,
He lives with her for ages, doesn't he, in the
yeah,
story?
yeah, I think that kind of the timeline's a bit obscured here, because I think there's quite some time that that they stay in in Circe's palace. But he does say eventually, here we go. Circe, keep the promise you gave and send me on my way, since my spirit is eager for home, and so too are my friends, who weary me with their grief whenever you happen to be absent.
It says a whole year has gone by as the months and seasons passed. Yeah.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yeah, a year. To this, the lovely goddess replied swiftly, Odysseus, man of many resources, scion of Zeus, son of Laertes, don't stay here a moment longer against your will, but before you head for home, you must make another journey. You must seek the house of Hades and dread Persephone, and consult the ghost of the blind Theban seer, Tiresias. His mind is still unimpaired, for even in death, Persephone grants him mental powers, so that he alone has wisdom, while the others flit like shadows. At her words, my spirits fell. Sitting there on the bed, I wept. I no longer wished to live and see the sunlight. But when I was wearied with weeping and wringing my hands, I answered her, saying, Circe, who will guide us on the way? No man yet has ever sailed at Hades in a black ship.
So why do they need to go and talk to this person?
Why? I think to get advice about actually getting home. So Circe gives him kind of detailed advice about how to consult the dead.
Man, thank God we got GPS nowadays. Imagine you had to go and consult the dead every time you needed to find somewhere.
No, right? And then quite suddenly, even as they're kind of preparing and finding out what to do, Elpenor, not one of the cleverest or bravest in battle, who, heavy with wine, he had climbed to the roof of Circe's sacred house, seeking the cool night air, and had slept apart from his friends. Hearing the stir and noise of the departure, he leapt up suddenly, and forgetting the way down by the long ladder, he fell headlong from the roof. His neck was shattered where it joins the spine. His ghost descended to the house of Hades. My crew were already on their way as I addressed them. No doubt you were thinking you were heading home, but Circe has set us on a different course to the house of Hades and dread Persephone, where I must consult the ghost of Theban Tiresias. At this, their spirits fell. As you can imagine, we're on our way. Oh, no, we're not. We've got to go to Hades. And they sat right down where they were and wept and tore at their hair, but their lamentations served no purpose. Okay, so that's the end of that book. Book
That's
10.
gold, though.
Next.
Can you imagine that? Hey guys, we've been here for a year. No, it sucks. Probably all want to go home. Just got to do a little detour on the way home.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think we need to do that one. I'm actually thinking that
I think we should
the
do the
thing,
ending, right? The suitors.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Let's go to home and find the ending. It's
This,
quite a few books though. It goes on for
I like the bit where they kill everyone.
I know, let's do so Odysseus comes back in disguise, basically,
Just out of
eventually.
curiosity, with this website you're on, can you actually buy like the bag with the wind in it or anything like that?
I don't know, Courtney. Don't know. Let's do so there's all these, kind of I mean it is stretched out over a lot of books, Odysseus' return. Let's do Odysseus and um I, I wonder where the like Argos the dog is. That's very moving, where he meets his old dog who's been waiting 20 years. Very old dog. Is it in
Looks
this
right.
one? No, I don't think so. Next book. No.
Oh, it's only a short bit. You could probably summarize it.
Oh, I want to do it. Oh, I don't want to miss it.
It's your favorite bit.
Yeah, okay. So Odysseus has reached the palace, right? He's come in disguise. And he's dressed as a beggar. He doesn't want the suitors or anyone to recognize him. So they spoke, and a dog lying there lifted its head and pricked up his ears. Argus was the hound of noble Odysseus, who had bred him himself, though he sailed to sacred Ilium before he could enjoy his company. Once the young men used to take the dog out after wild goat, deer, and hare, but with his master gone, he lay neglected by the gate among the heaps of mule and cattle dung that Odysseus's men would later use to manure the fields. There, plagued by ticks, lay Argus the hound. But suddenly, aware of Odysseus' presence, he wagged his tail and flattened his ears, though no longer strong enough to crawl to his master. Odysseus turned his face aside, and hiding it from Eumaeus, wiped away a tear, then quickly said, Eumaeus, it's strange indeed to see this dog lying in the dung. He's finely built, but I can't tell if he had speed to match or was only a dog fed from the table, kept by his master to show. Then Eumaeus the swineherd replied, Yes, this dog belongs to a man who has died far away. If he had the form and vigour he had when Odysseus left for Troy, you'd be amazed by the speed and power. He was keen-scented on the trail, and no creature he started in the depths of the densest wood escaped him. But now he's in a sad state, and his master has died far away from his own country, and the thoughtless women neglect him. When their masters aren't there to command them, servants don't care about the quality of their work. Far-voiced use takes half the good out of them the day they become slaves. With this he entered the stately house and, walking straight into the hall, joined the crowd of noble suitors. As for Argus, seeing Odysseus again in his 20th year, the hand of dark death seized him. So the old dog, 20 years old, which, as we know, even today is a long lifetime for a dog, he sees Odysseus and then he dies. It's a sad scene.
It's also, I can't help but find that a bit funny where it says just above there, Judith, about slaves don't do their work properly. Like it's hard to get good help.
That's right, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Every small business owner knows this problem too well.
Okay, Odysseus among the suitors. So Telemachus, so that's Odysseus' son. He notices a swineherd because that's how Odysseus is dressed, as a swineherd. And he called him swiftly to his side. Odysseus entered close on Eumaeus' heels in his beggar's disguise. Sorry, I think Eumaeus is a swineherd. So yeah, Odysseus is the beggar. Clothed in miserable rags. He leans on the doorpost. Telemachus called the swineherd, and taking a whole loaf from the fine bread basket, adding as much meat as his hands could hold, he spoke to him, saying, Take this food to the stranger, and tell him to do the round of the suitors one by one as well. It doesn't do for a man in need to be shy. At this the swineherd went over to Odysseus, and as he spoke to him, spoke with winged words, Stranger, This is from Telemachus, who suggests you do the round of the suitors one by one and says that a man in need should not be shy. Resourceful Odysseus spoke in return. Lord Zeus, I pray, grant that Telemachus may be blessed among men and receive all that his heart desires. Okay, now Athena appeared at Odysseus' side, close to that son of Laertes, and prompted him to go and gather scraps among the suitors and find out which were decent men and which were wild. Not that she meant to save a single one from death. So round he went, starting on the right, proffering his hand on every side like a true beggar. They wondered who he was and asked each other where he had come from, giving him food out of pity. And so, yeah, the beggar does the rounds of the hall.
You know, last time I mentioned the movie with Ralph Fiennes, and this whole scene and this whole section is, I think, quite a large part of the movie. He doesn't go into the actual getting home. It's all centered around Odysseus returning and finding the suitors and how he deals with them. And has anyone seen that movie? It's only been around for a year or so. It was very interesting. It wasn't very heroic or anything. Odysseus was much more of a human character in it.
So it's called The Odyssey? Is it called The Odyssey, the movie?
No, it's not. I'll have to look it up. I'll yell it out in a minute. It's worth watching. It's much more like well, it's just set in one location, you know, his home. So it feels like you're at the theater, really.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Okay, so Antinous, this guy, is the most arrogant of the suitors. And he says, what god is it, Antinous said, who brings this creature here to blight our feast? Get away from my table. Stand over there in the middle, you insolent and shameless beggar, lest you end up in a place more bitter than Egypt or Cyprus. Every man in turn you try will no doubt give to you without conscience or restraint, since there's never a thought of holding back when there's plenty to hand, and then making free with another man's wealth. And again, this um, is a kind of an insult to hospitality. This Antinous, who, you know, he's just a hanger on himself. This is not his palace, but he's basically wanting to be rude and insolent to this homeless person, this beggar, this Odysseus. Resourceful Odysseus drew back and answered, how's this? It seems your brains don't match your looks. If you can't bring yourself to break off a piece of bread when there's plenty here and give it to a suppliant at another man's table, is it likely you would even give a grain of salt from your own? At this, Antinous glowered, angered the more, and spoke winged words with a dark look. Now you're truly casting aspersions. I doubt you'll get out of this hall unscathed. And with that, he grasped a stool and threw it, striking Odysseus on his back under the right shoulder. But Odysseus stood firm as a rock and did not reel at the blow. He merely shook his head in silence, thinking dark thoughts in the depths of his mind. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of
The movie's called
toing and froing.
The Return.
Return.
The Return.
The Return,
Yeah. Yeah.
So Penelope, we haven't actually, you know, gone into her throughout this, but she's been basically fobbing off the suitors with this idea that she couldn't actually commit to one of them because she had to do this particular weaving first, and then she would unpick all the weaving overnight and do it again the next day. And this pretext was wearing a bit thin by the time this stranger appears. Penelope then summoned her loyal swineherd and said to him, worthy Eumaeus, go and ask the stranger to come to me so I can welcome him and ask if he has seen and heard heading through my steadfast Odysseus. He has the look of a much-travelled man. Go and summon him here, said wise Penelope, because that's her description is wise or aware. She's a very aware person. So that he can tell me face to face. As for those suitors, let them have their sport outside or in the hall below, light-hearted because their own stores of bread and mellow wine are safe at home, with only their servants to taste them, while they crowd our house day after day, killing our sheep and oxen and well-fed goats, feasting and wasting our glowing wine, squandering our wealth because there is no Odysseus here to stave off ruin. But if Odysseus comes home to his own country, He and our son will take revenge on these men for their rapacity. So she summons the stranger. But then Odysseus says he won't come and see her.
It's really cool, this story about how they play around with the concept of a stranger, you know, this idea of the hidden and the revealed, and that it could be a god or it could be a long lost husband, that it's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It really is. So at this point, Eumaeus is kind of not sure exactly who the beggar is. Um,
And just in the background there too, like it just got me thinking, it's probably not the first thing that pops into our heads as modern people, but I'm sure there's a relational component here too. Like, it's not just who you are as a person. The thing is, the person that you see who's a stranger or a beggar or whatever also comes from a place and is a part of a household. So it's not merely that you're potentially offending them. It could be their whole lineage, their connections to place and people.
yeah, exactly. So things are kind of left in abeyance, and meanwhile the suitors are still partying on. Okay,
I
yeah,
think,
there's another kind of whole book of toing and froing with the suitors. Sorry,
oh, I was just going to say on that point, Courtney, I think there's some connection I heard in some of the lectures I attended about truth being aletheia, and you might know this too, Judith, with your background and knowledge of languages, but it's about unconcealment or unveiling. So seeing beyond, the surface, and with all this disguise and deception, even with the Cyclops and the homeless sort of man, the beggar.
That's really
Um,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, seeing truth is to see beyond that, isn't it? Like to.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, because I've actually been thinking about that idea. I've been really pondering this idea of what is seen and then what is hidden. We see things, but what's hidden under the scene. And so that idea of, like, I think it relates even in the Stoic work of how impressions and how perception kind of works, is that, we rush in too quickly and we our mind kind of carries us away, and it says, I know this thing that I look at, but actually there's always an element of the hidden. And maybe that's what, like you just mentioned aletheia. That's really interesting, that it might mean something like to disclose or to reveal or something. That's really interesting. You're muted.
yeah. So looking at the summary of book 19, there's more kind of shadow boxing, as it were, between Penelope and Odysseus. Odysseus doesn't reveal himself yet. He tells a false story to his loyal wife Penelope, which is kind of, yeah. I mean, do we think that's a good thing or not? But anyway, meanwhile, the bit I want to go to is Eurycleia. Remember this? She was a slave girl, brought home by Odysseus's father, and now she's an old woman who's looked after Telemachus. Uh, anyway, she recognizes
Just quickly
her
though, on
king.
that note, so I don't know if this is the case. You just got me thinking about words. That he can't reveal himself at the wrong time because there's a sense of kairos, right? And kairos is probably goes hand in hand with this idea of truth and things like that. That it's not just that a thing can be revealed willy-nilly; it has to be revealed appropriately at the right time.
Yeah, and and obviously with the gods, playing along as well. That's the thing. Um, okay, so Eurycleia. Oh, Odysseus, my child, I can be no help to you. Zeus must have hated you more than other men. Though you were pious, no mortal ever offered the thunderers so many fat thigh pieces, such choice sacrifices, praying that you might reach a ripe old age and rear a noble son. Yet you alone he denies a homecoming. But listen to one thing I must say. Many a long-suffering traveller have we welcomed here, but never a man resembling another as you resemble Odysseus in looks and voice, even your feet. Then resourceful Odysseus answered as saying, that is what everyone says who has met us both, old woman, that we're very like, as you remark. With this the old woman, preparing to wash his feet, poured cold water in the shining basin and added hot. Odysseus swiftly sat down by the hearth and turned towards the shadows, though he had a sudden premonition that as she handled him she would notice his scar, and the truth would be out. As she approached and began to wash him, so it was. She immediately knew the scar Odysseus had received from a white-tusked boar while hunting on Parnassus, while visiting his mother's father, noble Autolycus, the greatest of all in thievery and oath-making. This Autolycus owed to the god Hermes himself, to whom he made favorable offerings, the thighs of lambs and kids, so that Hermes acted as his willing friend. Now Autolycus once visited wealthy Ithaca to find that his daughter had just produced a son. Eurycleia placed the baby on his knees as he was finishing supper and said to him, Autolycus, you must give a name to your grandchild. He has been long desired and prayed for. My son-in-law, my daughter, Autolycus replied, here's a name for you. Since I am one who's wished suffering to many men and women on this fertile earth, then let the child be named Odysseus, man of suffering. And for my part, when he is a man and comes to the great house of his mother's kin on Parnassus, where my wealth lies, I will give part to him and send him home happy. So Odysseus went there to receive Autolycus' promised gift. And Autolycus and his sons grasped his hands and welcomed him with warm words. Amphitheia, his maternal grandmother, clasped him in her arms, kissing his brow and gleaming eyes. So anyway, this is when Autolycus was a baby or child. He'd gone to his grandparents. And they'd had a boar hunt. And the story was Odysseus was the first to attack, his long spear raised in his great hand, eager to strike. But the boar was too swift for him, charging sidelong, catching him above the knee and tearing a long gash in the flesh with its tusk, though it failed to reach the bone. Odysseus's blow stabbed it deep in the right shoulder, and the point of the gleaming spear went clean through, bringing the boar to earth with a grunt and ending its life. Autolycus' brave sons bound up peerless godlike Odysseus' wound, staunching the flow of dark blood with an incantation. That's another pharmakos. Then busied themselves over the carcass and headed straight back to their noble father's house. So this is a flashback. Remember I said at the start, the Odyssey is full of these flashbacks. It was this scar the old woman felt as she passed her hands over his leg, and recognizing it, she let his leg fall. The bronze rang as his foot struck the basin, upsetting it and spilling the water on the ground. Joy and pain filled her heart at the same moment. Her eyes filled with tears and her voice caught in her throat. She touched Odysseus' face. Odysseus, must be. Child, I did not know you till my hands touched my master's limbs. Sorry.
It's beautiful, Judith. You find it very moving.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
I love how you read this Greek stuff and you just are so touched by it. I think that's amazing.
It comes from having read it as a child too, doesn't it, Judith?
Yeah. Okay, so Athena comes back, and there's a kind of a sort of a scene of the suitors sleeping with the maidservants, and kind of a grotesque scene about that. Okay, let's maybe find the next book. I'm trying to work out where the climax is. Okay, so Odysseus has finally revealed himself. And it's this scar that's key again. So saying, he drew his rags apart to show the long scar. When the two had examined it carefully, they clasped their arms about wise Odysseus's neck and weeping kissed his head and shoulders in loving recognition. Odysseus likewise kissed their heads and hands. So then there's the question, there's this great bow that belonged to Odysseus. Can anyone else draw it? Can Odysseus now draw it? Can he string it?
In the movie The Return, they make him a lot more human rather than, he's got these superhuman qualities here. And in the movie, I think there's a trick to stringing the bow. You have to do it a certain way. That's how they kind of get around it.
Yeah, but it also requires strength.
Yes, but here it almost seems like no one's as strong as Odysseus with his broad shoulders and so on and
Correct.
so forth.
And he is almost godlike then, isn't he? Like he's more than human because no one else can use the bow or string the bow.
And so they're kind of talking about it. So they chatted, but once wily Odysseus had flexed a great bow and checked it all over. He strung it easily, as a man skilled in song and the lyre stretches a new string onto its leather tuning strap, fixing the twisted sheep gut at either end. Then grasping the bow in his right hand, he plucked the string that sang sweetly to his touch with the sound of a swallow's note. The suitors were mortified and their faces were drained of colour. Noble, long-suffering Odysseus was pleased at this omen from the son of devious Cronos, and he picked up the feathered arrow that lay alone on the table next to him. He set it against the bridge of the bow, drew back the notched arrow with his string, and still seated in his chair, let fly with a sure aim. The bronze-weighted shaft flew through the handle hole of every axe from first to last without fail, sped clean through and out at the end.
So obviously the backstory here is there's a challenge that's been set up. They have to fire an arrow through the little holes at the top
there's
of
the
the
kind of
axe or
the
whatever.
picture of it through the rings of the arrows.
And in doing so, he invented darts.
Yeah, and then there's a kind of a lengthy battle. We don't need to probably go there.
Oh, man. The bit that shocked me as a kid in the version I read, it was really graphic. I was like, what? Old books have this sort of stuff in it? Because there was a section where I recall it, I would have been in high school, that they killed one of the suitors and hacked off his testicles and fed them to the dog. And I was like, wow, oh my God, that's badass.
All right, so this was, the bit that always, so the bit where Penelope's finally convinced. So obviously she's been as careful as Odysseus has been about who this person actually is, because there's no scope for error, right?
I thought you were going to say as careful as Odysseus in not sleeping with anyone.
Yeah, no, she's been more careful than he has. Okay, so cautious Penelope answers. One of her descriptors is wise, another is cautious. Cautious Penelope answered, Sir, you must have been touched by the same gods. I am not proud and scornful of you, nor am I confused. I know well how you looked when you sailed from Ithaca in your long-oared ship. Come then, Eurycleia, and have the great bed dragged from the fine bridal chamber he built himself, and cover it with rugs and fleeces and brightly coloured blankets. But the key is their bed is not one which can be dragged from one room to another. And the only person who would know that is, of course, her husband, Odysseus. A great secret went into its making, he says, and it was my work and mine alone. A long-leaf olive tree, strong and vigorous, and thick as a pillar, grew in the courtyard. I built my room of solid stone around it, finished it off with a fine roof, and added tight-fitting timber doors. I trimmed the trunk from the roots up, after cutting off all the long-leaf olive branches, smoothed it off skillfully and well, and trued it to the line. That was my bedpost. I drilled holes with the auger, and with this for its beginning, fitted all the smooth timbers of my bed until it was complete. I inlaid it with ivory, silver, and gold, and stretched shining purple straps of ox hide across. That was its secret, as I say. But, lady, I no longer know if the bed I made is still in place. Perhaps some man has chopped through the olive trunk and shifted it elsewhere. So this is another great passage, which in previous centuries, people would have thought, oh, obviously the king wouldn't make his own bed, wouldn't be using, tools like a tradesman. But again, this was Greece in the Bronze Age. So yes, a skillful king like Odysseus probably would have made his own bed out of olive wood. And Penelope is convinced. Dear wife, we have not yet reached the end of our troubles. I still have a long, hard labour to perform before I reach my end. Or so the spirit of Tiresias prophesied when I descended to Hades' house. So what's the next step? Oh, then Odysseus has to tell Penelope his long tale. Again, he's got to do the whole thing again. Yeah, I don't think we need to do the recap. That was it. I think that's...
Perfect timing.
Yep, that's it. Book 24. We got there.
You nailed it.
Well, that was such a great
Yeah,
great
wonderful. How do you think
introduction.
these were delivered? Were they done, at some point, in public, in an amphitheater, like over several nights or something like that? Do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. But also, students learnt them off by heart. So
Yeah.
Plato tells us in the Protagoras, that's what they learned at school. They learnt this whole thing off by heart, the Iliad and then the Odyssey.
Yes.
A couple of weeks ago, I was reading, I downloaded a translation that had quite a big introduction. I'm sorry I haven't got the name to hand right at this moment. But in the introduction, the translator was claiming that it could have been written by a young woman, and the theory was it was a young Turkish woman. And anyway, it was in a well-known translation. I'll have to find the name of the translator, but that was his theory, and he reckoned it was well backed up. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, because we know literally nothing about Homer. That's the thing. So a whole range of theories have been current at different times. Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, we just don't know. But
No.
so yeah, I mean, again, this happens with other authors as well. So, for instance, people have questioned Shakespeare. I mean, yeah, these things are very. I mean, it's kind of ironic that with these great poets such as Homer and such as Shakespeare, we really don't have much biographical information.
No.
So there's a lot of scope for speculation.
Well, that was great. Thank you for your effort, Judith. That was
quite
a big task. Thank you very much.
Oh, no worries. It's a
Do
shame
you
Sam
like
wasn't
this
here.
translation, Judith? Do you like this
Look,
like this is one that you're fond of, or is it?
yeah, it's pretty. I mean, it's it's okay, but it is prose, right? I mean, a poetic translation would be better, but such as the one Sam uploaded.
Yes,
But I found it hard with his because he had just uploaded the whole PDF, so it was very hard
yeah,
to pick and select where you need to be. So that's
that's right.
why
Because this
this
is
version
really
has
well,
been.
yeah, this is so well set out, isn't it, for you to
It
be
is,
able
yeah. It's really
to
easy to
navigate.
access. To
Yeah, it's
navigate, that's
great.
the thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And just
that's
thank you,
wonderful.
Judith, because it was such a human delivery too. I can't think of anyone who could
Mm.
have done a better job. So thank
No,
you.
Oh,
nor
thank
do I.
you. I mean,
Nor
I
do
do
I.
get emotional because great literature does that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
great. I love it. It's moving.
absolutely.
Well, guys, why don't we
All
wrap it
right.
up? Does anyone else, I think in the background, I can't see you there, Catherine. Do you want to say anything before we wrap
Oh,
it
I
up?
just want to say thanks. There's just so much to unpack, isn't it? Like, I feel like you could almost spend a year on this and not even scratch the surface. You could, yeah, it's just such a great poem and so moving, and yeah, so much to unpack and so many lessons, life lessons in there.
Mm.
Sure.
Yeah, I haven't reread it for a long time. I read it as a teenager too, so I think it's a good reminder that, as an older person now, it's probably time to revisit it. It probably has a different meaning and resonance, I think,
Yeah.
for me now. So
Yeah,
yeah.
but just on that, Catherine, there's a new translation by Daniel Mendelsohn,
Mm.
who's an amazing American classicist, and apparently it's a great translation. So that's something I want to check out, but haven't had the opportunity to yet. But yeah,
Daniel Mendelsohn,
Mendelssohn,
Mendelssohn.
Mendelssohn, Mendelssohn.
Okay.
He's an excellent classicist translator commentator, so I'm sure he will have done an amazing job.
Mm.
And I just want to say today's Valentine's Day, so thank you for reading those very romantic parts out to us, Judith. That was very
Oh, no
kind.
worries.
Lovely. Very lovely.
All right, well, we'll wrap it
Right.
up. Nice to see you all,
Okay,
and
thanks.
Yeah,
we'll work out
yeah,
what we're
good.
doing next soon. See ya.
All right.
Okay,
Good
bye.
night.
Yeah.